mean, this to me, I just don't know how anybody thinks that this is a ball that they live on, spinning in space. To me, it's so laughable at this point that it's embarrassing that I ever believed it, and it's embarrassing that I feel. I mean, I beat myself up over the fact that I cannot get people to see it.
They're also able to profile people, and I suppose they would probably pick them out of the ranks of different secret societies, but especially profile people who have no problem with telling absolute lies in order for personal gain and in order to have sort of duper's delight and control over people. I'm sure that they must screen for that in astronauts.
The fact that you can go to that Sky Planetarium now and see that they changed the dates from before being able to go 10,000 years total, 5,000 years in the future, 5,000 years back. And because I made the video talking about Polaris not moving, and that you could see in this software that you can go 5,000 years ahead or 5,000 years back, and the North Star stays in the exact spot. And 2 weeks later, he's changed the whole program to where now you can only go to 1500 AD to 2500 AD. And I even wrote him an email, and he just said, "Oh, I got a lot of complaints that it wasn't accurate." And I said, "Well, what are you using? What data are you using? NASA's data? Because then it has to be accurate. What do you mean? How can it not be accurate? What you're saying is that you have programmed a planetarium software with data that you certainly didn't make up. You know, you didn't get that data yourself. You had to go and get that data from somebody, and that data is requiring that Polaris stay where it is for all time. That's the long and the short of it. That there's no way that the data has Polaris moving, or your data would be correct." And I kept emailing him, and he eventually stopped emailing me back because they realize what's going on. They either sell out or something. I don't know what it is, but they're not able to use their brain to think anymore. They just have given it all away to whatever mainstream science says I believe, whatever they tell me to do, I do, whatever they say is the truth must be, and that's how they operate their lives. And I refuse to do that, because especially when you can prove that those people are
we're
lying.
darting through space overall at, a couple million miles an hour, or something close to that. It just makes no sense that there would be this cyclical thing, if we're heading in a generally linear direction. We shouldn't be seeing these star patterns, and that is the most obvious common sense that we can really point out to people. And the whole idea of the stars being so distant that we will never see that parallax even in our lifetimes, is ridiculous. Here's a great comment. This guy says, Jaron,
Mm-hmm.
Polaris moves little, but it moves, and you can see it with the $300 telescope. What an idiot.
Okay, so did
No,
you hear
you
what I
can't
just
see
said?
it.
But what I just said is that the data that people are using to build software that is supposed to show this, that because they had 10,000 years in the future and Polaris didn't move, then that means it doesn't move at all. Not a little bit at a time, or else it would move a little bit at a time, meaning if you went ahead 2,000 years, it needs to move a little bit in 2,000 years. But he had to go
but
back and
but
change his software.
but Jaron,
Ridiculous.
but Jaron, all you need is a $300 telescope, and you can prove all these software companies wrong. Jaron, come on.
I already
Well,
did prove him wrong. Then
you
why do you
know,
think
the
they changed
thing
their
is
program?
Polaris
God.
does Polaris does move. It makes the tiniest little circuit, over a course of 24 hours. But if you focus a telescope in that general area that it's going to make its little ring within, it doesn't move. And that's the case, allegedly for thousands of years. And just based on the precession of the equinoxes, which is allegedly caused by axial precession or the wobble of the Earth's axis over 26,000 years, then we should see major changes in the North Star relatively frequently, like really frequently, and we don't.
At all.
Yeah, at all. That's exactly right. And even my $7,000 telescope doesn't show that. It just doesn't. Yes, you're right, John. There is a slight wobble, if you will, to Polaris, but again, it's just ridiculous.
So my question on these ones is, if we were to watch this, oops, I don't know why it's so zoomed in over here. Okay, well, if we're gonna watch the glare, okay, so the glare of the sun, which we see right here, here it comes.
Hmm.
Okay, so now it's right here. Okay, we'll keep watching this glare. Okay, now it's going here. Okay, now it disappears here, right? So then how does it reappear here? What if you're on the other side? So you're telling me that if you're on the other side of the planet, then when this glare is here, the other person also sees a glare over there on their side? Is that what it would be? That it's just so clearly not a ball. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
This is done with high altitude planes that take photos of the clouds that are sent down and they're mapped on a ball. That's it. It's so simple, and yet people act like they'll let them discover satellites 13 billion miles into the universe. No problem. That's easily doable. But when you say this is done with high altitude planes, they lose their minds. Like, oh, are you kidding me? How would they ever do that? What do you mean they fake things with balloons? How would they ever do that? Well, because it's so simple. You have a model of a ball, you take the cloud footage, you send it down to the station, and it's mapped on a ball. And I think, Bob, I sent you one time an email response from somebody at a satellite place where I asked them, does the data go straight from the satellite to you? I think it was the University of Wisconsin. Is that how it works? And they said, oh no, it goes to the NOAA first. Then they have to do this and this. They have to encode it. They have to, and then we get the data. But it's like, okay, well then how is nobody noticing this is a problem? That nobody's seeing the data until it goes through these stations where, of course, it's encoded and it's mapped onto a ball. Right.
Yes.
But I mean, look at the stability of this camera too. In orbit, just perfectly still. Because remember, it's spinning with the Earth right now. Everything's spinning. Here's the even funnier thing, and I think people forget this. I'm going to pause it here and let's just think about something. Okay, let's pause it right here. Oh, what was that? This is the eclipse? Okay, this is the eclipse. This is the moon going across. But we don't see the moon because it must be somewhere else and getting blocked. Remember this. This right here is water. This is water. I mean, that alone should make you just think for a second that this is water. We know what happens with water. And we just believe these pictures that water just curves like this over here, sideways, but there's no up or down in space. But this water it's sucked to the middle of the ball, and we know that because why? Where's the evidence of that? Oh, because the Earth. Well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Can you show me in a lab? Can you show me somewhere? Can you show me some model, where can I prove that mass pulls to the center? Because I'll go get the biggest rock that there is, and nothing will pull to anything on it. It will fall to the ground, and everything put on top of the rock will fall to the ground.
So what they're showing here is it looks like they've got like a tape measure or something that's on a string. And
am I looking at the right video?
I think.
Okay, I see it. Oh boy.
Yeah, that's it. That's our Huckleberry. So
how could the
string? I don't see the balls attracting each other. Maybe this little tape measure thing is.
Which we already know that. Hold on, I'm trying to see what's going on here. That's not the way that the experiment's supposed to go.
Well, let's just see what happens. I mean, if they're actually going to make the claim that because this thing twists and goes to them, that is no proof of jack.
No,
I mean that's ridiculous. In fact,
the star field, and that's an admitted
copper
thing.
Wire, he says.
Yeah, but the star field would cause that, or the Earth spinning, either one. I don't understand how that's a proof of gravity.
Yeah, or Coriolis effect, or
that's what I mean.
Birkeland currents. I mean, come on. What is? Yeah, it's inching closer. It's also kind of vibrating back and forth. Yes, it's inching closer. This is supposed to prove gravity, Sean. Are you serious?
Here's another thing too. This obviously isn't being done in a vacuum, and so you've got atmosphere that's in there, and the bowling ball or whatever that is going to be displacing some atmosphere, and that could cause enough perturbances to allow for some sort of attractant. But the simple fact that whatever that tape measure thing is dangling, it's going to sway sometimes, and to say that's because of the attraction of those balls it's ridiculous.
Yeah, gravity is an acceleration 9.8 meters per second squared. Gravity is an acceleration 9.8 meters per second squared. Gravity is an acceleration 9.8 meters per second squared. Gravity is an acceleration 9.8 meters per second squared.
Yeah, it should accelerate towards it. I mean, if you use, I mean, I've been on plenty of construction sites where we've dealt with multi-ton stones, and I'm telling you, there is no attractant force between very large, dense objects and other, high density large objects. There just isn't. Yeah, and it's so ridiculous because everybody knows that you cannot demonstrate mass or, even high density large chunks of matter being attractive to other large high density chunks of matter under any circumstances, unless maybe, there's magnetism involved, but just sheer density and mass. There is no attractant force, and frankly, that should be scalable. But Cavendish allegedly used, I think it was like 300-pound lead balls or something like that, which, that's not very impressive, actually. And any measurements that he may have taken, which I don't necessarily trust Cavendish at all, but even if the measurements that he took were accurate, there's a million different explanations for what could have caused that other than gravity, because again, anyone can demonstrate that no matter how large or massive an object is, it has no attractant force whatsoever. It's just that things just don't behave that way. According to the theories and the laws of gravity, they have to do with mass, density, and proximity. So honestly, you'd have a better chance of proving gravity by setting those two bowling balls pretty close to one another and waiting around to see when they start rolling towards each other, because there would be theoretically a greater gravitational force between the two bowling balls and one of the bowling balls and whatever those little weighty objects are, because
And
again,
so,
gravity would be increased with the mass and
I don't know, is
proximity of
that's
each object. So
right now it's
I don't
uh,
know
closer,
what
so
that is,
shouldn't
but
it get there? But it never gets there.
or maybe it's just looking that way on the live feed. No, it's showing that way on your feed too. See how red it is?
Yeah,
Why is that? That's odd.
I guess because Australia is red. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it.
When I research, I don't probably research like other people. I research into just people and blogs and things like that. I wanted to find somebody that works for NASA that just got a job and just watch them talk about it. And I found this girl's website. She's blogging. She's an engineer, and I was telling my wife this story last night. So we're reading this blog, and she's talking about what her day-to-day job is. And she says, well, my first project there as an engineer was to do this test to see if oxygenated something or other would work in space. So then she describes the steps that she goes through. And there's like 7 steps, to research it, then to draw it, then to get it cleared through safety, then to present it, and then to reconstruct it, and then to test it, and then to give a final report. Because she does this test, she was at 6 months through the test, and she was at step 4. Like, what is she doing that is taking that kind of time? Can you picture going to work every day and just coming home from work, and what'd you do today? Same thing, babe. Same thing again. I called some more people, just researching this oxygenated thing in space. Doing it tomorrow, doing it the next day. Then we're going to do some tests for 3 months, and then we're going to go and talk to some people about the safety behind it for a month. And then we're going to, what a joke.
This is pathetic.
This thing will never end up in space. It'll get turned down or whatever, or get told it's not safe enough.
just get all this fakery, and the claim that you mentioned, where it would be easier to actually go than to fake it, is just so preposterous. I mean, to actually think that it would be easier to go to the moon, which they claim they did, which is like 250,000 miles each way, that would actually be easier than making the cheap films that they did and tricking people. Like, who could possibly make that argument with a straight face? I mean, it makes no sense.
Fountain. We've got us a globe, and we got us a flat plane. So water is my #1 go-to evidence for my argument. Remember, we're in an argument here, so it is you versus me. It is your theories, theoretical jargon, versus observable evidence. So water, let's go over some facts about water. Water seeks to find its level, and no matter what container it rests inside of. However, water also takes the form of whatever container either it's inside of or the form of whatever shape it's going over the top of. So here we have a globe, and water is forming to the shape of the globe because it is in motion. So the difference between the water leveling off flat in a standing water situation and a vessel where it's being held, the water levels off flat here, and on top of the globe the water has to be in motion for that to happen. So water isn't standing water. It's not standing there in this position. Let's just say this is the, you know, the Gulf of Mexico right here, or the Atlantic Ocean, you know, right here. The water isn't on this example, is not just sitting there. It's sliding off, obviously, right? So if I was on a ship right here, I'd be getting thrown around the globe. Okay, hold on. I got your rebuttal, your gravity, right? So let's just pretend gravity is pulling everything to the center of this globe, and gravity is holding all of this water into its position. Let's pretend that's a real thing. If that's true, then I should be able to observe from orbit, from the ISS, I should be able to observe this curve of water. You get that? The water should curve like this over a ball. And obviously you can see how fast it's going over the ball, so obviously our oceans aren't doing this. So the size comparison of this globe to the Earth at 25,000 miles in circumference, the Earth would be shooting the water so fast that it would be covering the continents. We would constantly be having tsunamis over every continent, and if it was doing that. So we'd all be drowning in water, essentially.
In one aspect, it's what I'm passionate about. It's deeper than flat Earth, you see. The discussing and the talking about Earth is actually a field of study. But when we talk about space, when we talk about Earth, when we talk about all of these things, y'all, it's a field of study. So what I do is I teach cosmology. That's what I think many of y'all get twisted. So let me repeat this question again from my brother. He said, question, why are you trying so hard to preach this flat earth stuff, and what does it matter? I'm gonna deal with that. I don't preach flat earth. You teach flat earth. The term flat earth is what's confusing you. It's deeper than flat earth. Again, it's cosmology.
That's all, folks.